In her NDE, Holly Porter heard the songs of angels. She saw a recently passed grandchild now standing before her fully grown, and she was sent back with a powerful message for humanity. Leave a comment in support of Holly being willing to share her story. And if you've had a profound spiritual experience that you would like to share on the show, you'll find the link to apply in the description box below. Let's just dive in. I would like to hear about your spiritual journey. Was your NDE your first major spiritual experience, or did you have some before that?
Well, that was my main ones. As I thought about it later, there were a lot of experiences I had growing up that I just didn't connect the dots to until your eyes are a little bit more opened. But this journey from being in the hospital definitely was amazing.
Okay, well, let's start there. I would love to hear anything leading up to your NDE that's relevant to the story, and then we can get into your NDE.
Oh, of course. I know that. So I didn't know you know all this because you've been involved in this a lot more years than me. There's out of body, there's spiritual transformation, and there's near death. Maybe there's other things, but that's what I know. And I had all of them within about a 3.5 week period of time. So backing up, I was a really healthy person, and I just never hardly got sick. And I went to a conference during COVID. So it was fall of 2021. And everyone suffered from COVID. Everyone has a story. Everyone probably has a loss of some sort. So there's nothing unusual about my story there, except not very many people came out of what I went through. I ended up coming home and being sick for about a week, living in a fifth wheel, waiting for our house to close, and which we lost, by the way, because nobody knew if I was going to live. And I fought it because I'm really holistic. And then I woke up and intuitively knew I was in big trouble, couldn't breathe. I gave my husband COVID as well. So he wasn't as bad as I was. He didn't get hospitalized, but he did end up on oxygen and with some blood clots. And I woke him up, and we were scared. We were having people leave food. Not that I remember eating any of it that week, but they would leave it on our steps of our fifth wheel. We wouldn't even come out. We didn't want to get anyone sick. I thought, oh, I'd feel horrible if I infected somebody with what I have. We had the Delta version. Anyway, he took me to the hospital, and he said, we all know how long it takes to get in the ER and get anything done. He dropped me off at the door. I got myself in there. He went and parked and came back, and he said, they already had me in the ICU. They had put
Wow.
3 things of oxygen on me. My oxygen was like 63. So got the Delta version COVID. Ended up, that was my first day of 70 that I was in the hospital. And I had 2 intubations. I had a trachea, sepsis, some other life-threatening infections. And so that first 3.5 weeks was really touch and go. I mean, the whole 70 days was an issue, but those were the times that I was on a ventilator, total of about 52 of those days. And then twice during that time had the intubations. So of course you're in a coma a lot of the times. I think 32 of the days total I was in a coma, mostly induced. They do that so your body will relax, but you're on all kinds of drugs too. I mean, I had every drug there is, which was really challenging. It took about 4 days before they intubated me because I probably refused. I don't remember, but of course back then, what we knew was that, oh, you have COVID, you go on a ventilator, bye-bye. So there's a conversation I've recorded with my sister. So my 2 twin sisters would come every 24 hours. One person could be with me, and they would just take shifts. They knew intuitively I needed somebody there from the beginning. It's weird because I'm very independent, but it was a scary feeling not to be able to breathe. And I was grateful I was put in a coma for those days, because at one point I had lost all of my senses. So I don't know if you knew, but when you have a ventilator, they tie your hands to the bed. So you can't touch anything. Taste and smell was gone from COVID. I'm legally blind naturally. So if I didn't have any correction on, then I couldn't see who anyone was unless they were about 8 inches in front of my face. And all I could see was eyes because everybody had their head gear on and their mask and their gown, and they were all yellow. So like, unless I knew the eyes, I didn't even know who people were. My ventilator somehow took 90% of my hearing away. So all I heard was like Charlie Brown teacher. Wah, wah, wah. So I was happy to be in a coma. My first experiences were out of body experiences, had lots of crazy ones about that. We don't have to go too much detail because there's lots of stories behind it, but I did go back in time. So I knew the place I went to. It ended up being my great, great, great grandfather's home that he had built. I found out later he hadn't lived there very much, but a lot of his family did. And it's only about 15 minutes away from where I live now. I had been there on a little cousins camp. And so I knew where I was. When I revisited it, it's now a museum that they've remodeled a couple times. But there was this creepy, like, staircase, like a circle like staircase that you could look down to and see the bottom of the floor, which was dirt. And when I went back, like, that's existing still. That was still there. And I just remember getting chills because it was like, it was creepy. Yeah, there were some horrible things that had gone on. All of us have family history, good and bad. And it was just some crazy things and crazy stories about it. But 165 years ago is what we traced it back to be. So, and then a few times I would go out of body in current time, in different scenarios, but never in the future. I always was like either current and mostly past. So those were those experiences I had. The spiritual experience I had is pretty easy story to tell.
If you've been feeling disconnected from spirit, disconnected from divine love, I have an offering for you. I now offer one-on-one energy work sessions. It's my very favorite work that I've ever done. I completely rebalance your energy field and give you a transfusion of divine love and healing energy for any specific area of need, and follow it up with feedback on what I find in your energy field, a little bit of spiritual coaching, and simple takeaway practices that you can take into your life and implement to help you cultivate a deep connection with divine love. I offer 30-minute sessions, 45-minute sessions, and I'm currently offering 50% off on my 4-session package. Check the link in the description to sign up.
The spiritual experience I had is pretty easy story to tell. I believed for a long time that was another NDE. I thought I had 2 NDEs. And then I realized that's what this was. And the story behind that was, I had a cousin, kind of like a sister, a little closer than a cousin. And she had texted my sister. She lived in Arizona. We're in Utah. And she had texted the one that was there staying with me. I can't remember which one it was that day. A lot of days were blur. And in fact, a whole month went by. They asked me if I knew what month it was. And I had been in there a whole month and I didn't even know. Like, a month had gone by. So I was way out of it. But I was sharing, I couldn't talk. I had to point to alphabet to spell out things on a piece of paper when I could even lift my hand. Because when you're in that state, you have no energy, you have nothing. So it was really hard to communicate. And anyway, the cousin sent a text, and she had been at one of our religious buildings, and she had been praying for my husband and I that we would get better. And she's a feeler. I'm more visual. She's more of a feeler. And she had all these spirits surrounding her. And she's kind of nosy. So she's like, asked who they were. Of course she did. And one by one, she got the names and she spelled those out in the text and said everything. And this was this really spiritual experience for her. But she said, I wouldn't normally send this in a text, but I know Holly's not doing well right now. So I want you to read this to her. And so they did. And I thought, that was really special, blah, 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 right? It was her experience, not mine. And so then I must have got put back in a coma, because I remember laying there, and this was one of the really defining moments. This was actually happened after the NDE, which we'll revisit here in a minute. It was that line in the sand moment where you know something to be so true to your core. And I actually was angry because I'm laying there thinking, is this it? Like, was I a good enough person? Was I kind enough? Was I loving? What's happening? And is this a legacy that I'm leaving? Am I proud of that? All these thoughts are going through there as I'm praying, and being really angry and saying, it's the redhead snottiness in me. Sorry, it's just there. And the sisterly rivalry, even though we were cousins. This isn't fair. Why did she get that experience and I didn't? I'm the one laying here suffering. Why not me? And that was, it's like, be careful what you ask for. That
Right.
was when everything shifted. And my mom had passed about a year and a half before. She came to me a lot while I was in there in the hospital, always on my right side. I have many healers, friends that I have tell me the same thing. So it was nice to have that verification. Just like when I saw the staircase, it's always nice to later see, oh, that really was there. I wasn't just thinking or dreaming this. Well, she came this time to me and said to me what a lot of people you hear say, it's not your time. And she says, you need to fight. And when she said the word fight, I remember kind of cringing because I don't love that word. It just from being bullied as a child, it's just like not a good word for me. So it was interesting that it was used in such a spiritual experience for me, which was probably also healing. But as she said the word fight, so I'm laying in my bed. Little side note, when I traveled in my out of body experiences and even to my near death experience, by the way, I took my bed with me. So there's a chapter in my book coming up that's even called Me in My Bed. And I think subconsciously, I was aware that I was in that bed. And I remember like not feeling in my bed, seeing me in my bed. Does that make sense? So that was probably
Yeah.
part of the out of body stuff that was going on many times. Um, I'm just realizing how many times that happened now that I'm thinking about it. I've never actually shared that before. But I remember thinking maybe if I didn't take my body with me, I wouldn't get it back. And so I just take my bed with me. And the funny thing is I'd even have like picture an ambulance with a hitch pulling up to my hospital room, which technically was a Connex like storage crate thing, those shipping crates. That was my room. It wasn't really, but that was my room. And it would pull up, and sometimes my whole room would take me away for the day on my little out of body experiences. I'd have everything, and then they'd come back and unhook and leave me there at night for my medical care. So, like, I knew this was going on. So, this particular time, I'm laying in my bed, and the vision is actually in front of me. My mom's on the right, and I even had a painting of this commissioned that took about 8 months to do, and it was amazing. So I'm looking at it this way. The painting's actually on the side of me because that's how we had to have it painted. But all these people appeared that were my ancestors in white. So everyone that had died, and they're all in white in front of me. Aunts, uncles, my brother had passed away, grandparents, and my mom was already on the right side of me. My grandbaby had just died 6 months before as a baby, and she was a full adult, but I knew it was her. It was amazing. It was like you get to see this grandchild that now is an adult. And they all stood in front of me and started chanting, fight, fight, fight. It was like this whole cheer squad. And every time the word fight would come up, I would get a whole new line of people now in street clothes knowing they're alive. And my husband and my kids and my friends, my siblings all appear. And every time they just kept chanting that, like thousands of people that I didn't even recognize, just back as far as you could see. If you looked in a two-way mirror, front and back of you, and you can just see forever, it was just like that, thousands of people. And it was that moment, it was so defining that I was like, okay, got it. I'm going to live. and I need to fight. Got it. I mean, that's all I needed to know. It wasn't a fun journey back. I knew it would be a long journey back, but it was just knowing that. And I had the gift of knowing before all of this. And if you have that, you know what I mean, because you know. But people with that gift get asked a lot by other people, like, how do you know that? I don't know. I just do. You know, with without a shadow of doubt in your gut and your mind in your life that it's true for you. And anyway, so that was just, and that's been turned on. I would say that gift is even more. Um, I feel like I was going through that experience and getting those lessons, but I feel like I was put in a coma, and I had many people tell me this, which is funny. People that know me, you were put still so you'd learn to listen. You weren't listening. There was something not going right that you needed a course correction. And this is the only way that God could get you still is to get you in a coma. And I mean, it's funny, but it's true. That probably was the case. So that was, like I said, more the end of that 3.5 weeks when I had that experience, but I'd already had my near death. Very clear when I know I had my near death. Do you want to jump into that?
Sure, let's go for it.
And anything else that I feel like sometimes I get distracted and go all over with this story, but there's like so many details sometimes I remember later. And I just want to preface to your audience too that I have long COVID, and that brain fog is real. If you've experienced that, you know what I'm saying. But with long COVID, it goes in waves. And even though it's been going, it's been 3.5 years since I was in the hospital, there's always lingering things when you have long COVID. So that's why I go all over the place. So hope you're tracking me. So the near death, this is the story. And there's some fun stuff to it. I just feel so blessed to have experienced all of these. But this one was the one I didn't remember a lot of details. So I'm going to share the story, and then I'm going to show you the rest of the story that's still actually in the rest of the story. And you'll know what I mean as we go along. So I was intubated when this happened, and I left my room in my bed this time. And this time I was being rolled down the hospital hallway. And the first thing I remember doing, because I wasn't intubated, even though physically I kind of sat up to the receptionist. I have no idea why her, and I started shaking my finger at her, and I said, I rescind my DNR. I rescind my DNR, which is do not resuscitate. I don't even know for sure, to tell you the truth. I don't even think I had one, but I must have known that means they're going to just let me die if I flatline or whatever. So I must have known I was on my way to being over. And I did that first. And then I noticed all these other hospital beds coming down hallways. And I think now I look back and I think they were the people in the hospital dying with me. And so we were all like going on this journey together. And then we ended up, it was almost like it paused. I was out of first of all, we ended up in like this huge stadium, like picture a big football stadium, and all of the boxes, what do you call those? Sky boxes. We got those because we were in hospital beds. So we got special treatment, and we got to go up around in all those. So I remember getting in there, and then I remembered it kind of stopped at that point. There was like, once we got to that point, it stopped. And then the next moment I was in this, I call a concert. It was like, I mean, when I was explaining it later, I listened to some of the words I was saying, and because I couldn't figure out what had happened, So I'm like in this moment going, oh, this is cool. This is the best concert I've ever been to. And everybody was just literally floating around, because I remember seeing feet, but nobody was on the ground. And I remembered if I had a question that came in my head, I instantly had an answer. Like it was just this telepathy stuff going, and it was like, wow, I remember thinking I could get really smart hanging out up here, and I could learn a lot. Because you would just, at first I was confused, but of course I'm like, and so then the concert starts, is what I'm calling it. I don't know if it was, and it was like, they sounded like angels. Duh, they were angels. And I just remember I had never heard the songs, but I knew the words to every song, and I loved to sing. And so I, of course, sang in. And so I remember just this really peaceful side of things happening. I remember what I thought was my life review, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a minute. But I just remember all the love about it. It wasn't, because, I know I did plenty of bad things. So I just remember feeling, the feeling I had was all love. Okay. So that's about what I had remembered in that piece until um, all of a sudden I end up back in my body and not being happy about it because I was really, really confused and scared. So my sister had left. They were there all the time with me, but I was doing better because she had left around an errand and she came back. And she said, when I came back, you were like just freaked out. Like they can usually just sense stuff of what was happening. And of course, I'm ventilated. I could only point to letters on the alphabet. Sometimes it took 2 hours to spell out one word. I would be so frustrated. I didn't even want to speak to anyone or talk to anyone. I was just like, oh, just put me back in a coma. I mean, it was just like so hard. And she said, you started spelling out KID. And she's like, oh, kids, do you need me to tell your kids something? You know, they're always trying to help me so I wouldn't have to spell another letter. And she knew that wasn't it. And then I kept going and I spelled NAP. And she said, when you got to kidnap, and she knew that was what I was spelling. She like says, I looked around. She goes, I like wanted to throw up because I had ran an errand and I'm like, what could have possibly happened while I was gone? And she said, right when you got the word out and I was trying to figure out what was happening, the doctor and the nurse walked in to extubate you and they took your intubation out. And she says, you could talk and you had lots to say, but it was hard to understand, but she could hear. But I remember there being spirits still in the room and realizing pretty quickly I was the only one seeing them because the doctor and the nurse went out. She's in there. She's opening up the bathroom door, the closets, the drawers, showing me nobody's in there. And then I'm like, it kind of just dawned on me, oh, you just can't see them. They're here. But there was like, obviously that fear that I was kidnapped. And I sat with that and thought, why would I feel kidnapped when I was just visiting the most glorious place I've ever been in? Why did I have that feeling? And do you know, it took me 2 years to find that out. And so this is part of the rest of the story. So another thing I've heard a lot of others say, first of all, for about a year after I got out of the hospital, I was really sick for a long, long time. I was on oxygen a long time. And then all the diagnoses started coming in from it. And being a completely healthy person, walking in on no drugs, walking out on 12. I mean, I quickly got off of all of them, but it was a long journey back. And like I said, I still suffer from long COVID. I don't really talk about the diagnoses because I don't want to be attached to them. I am focused on healing. I want to get better. So the next 2 years were completely the worst 2 years of my whole entire life, times 100, I'd almost say. Everything bad that had ever happened, I had been through divorce and embezzlements and, bullying and you name all the troubled things of our childhood, whatever, times it by probably even 100. And it wouldn't even match what this 2 years was, which was really difficult. I cried every day. I'm not a crier. I was just like, why? Like the relationships that mattered the most to me were the ones most jeopardized, siblings and children. It's like you would think they almost lost you as a mother or a sister. They would gravitate towards you and they didn't. They like pushed me away. And it was just some horrible, horrible things that happened, some heartbreaking things. And I could never figure it out. Like till looking back now, sometimes I think we have to just do that. Like later you understand why. And when you're in the moment of a hard thing, you just have to know this too will pass. But when you're in it, it's really hard to remind yourself of that. I remember my sister saying to me, I just want you to feel some peace. And it's so, I didn't know what that felt like. I don't know if I had really felt true peace until now in my life, my whole life. And I'm 57. I'm a little slow. Apparently it takes me longer to figure things out. But after the 2 years, we were just at the end of this horrible experience. I was inspired to call my friend who had trained me in hypnosis and asked him I felt like I had the out of body experiences down. I had the spiritual transformation experience down, but the NDE, there was some gaps. Like I was really confused why I felt kidnapped. That was weird. And I said, would you do a hypnosis session on just the NDE? And so he agreed reluctantly, like I would have been all over that. As someone asked me to do that, I said, heck yeah, this is great. I had a friend with multiple personalities once that I did it on and talked to all four of her personalities. Like I ate that up. It was just like the most fascinating experience. So for someone to have to think about it, I got him to agree. And he was the perfect person. I trusted him. I knew hypnosis process. I know that in hypnosis, you can open your eyes, you get out of it in a second if you want to. Well, I didn't want to. I wanted that experience because I felt like, no, there's some gaps missing. And out of my book being written, out of integrity, I want to make sure we complete this story. So here's the rest of the story. So he gets me into this hypnosis session, lasted about an hour and 40 minutes. In the beginning, it's all like childhood stuff, and things. And when you first felt alone. And the first thing I realized with that was it took me back. I don't know how many of you have memories going really young, but I never did. I didn't even have that many memories growing up. I didn't have a bad childhood, but I wouldn't say it was this wonderful, great childhood either. I felt like a middle child. And there were 9 kids in my family. But I was number 3, but just the way we were spread out and with twins after me, it was just a weird dynamic. And it took me back to this spot where I was hiding behind a chair and I realized the scene that he came to was I was 17 months old. So that shocked me that I actually had this memory. And he was wanting me to go back to the first memory when I felt alone. And okay, so I'm there and he's like, describe it to me. What was happening was my mom had 5 kids under 4.5. So she had a 4.5-year-old, a 3-year-old, I was 17 months, and brand new twins. What a saint, right? I don't know how parents could do that. I don't see that happening much anymore. But my sister had experienced this experience that I was experiencing now already with my brother coming. My brother experienced it with me already of, coming to the world. Well, this is my first time. I'm a 17-month-old baby. And now I'm competing with 2. My mom didn't even know she was having twins. So she went planning on having 1 and comes home with 2 babies. So I was hiding behind this chair. And that was my first memory of feeling unseen and feeling alone. And so that was a really kind of the first thing. And I was like, so I'm processing that as we're going along all this. And then he jumped into my near-death experience. And where I landed was not what I remembered. So I went in the hospital bed, went to the stadium, was in the bright light, right? Well, here I landed in what I call the in-between. I don't know what else to call it because it wasn't dark and it wasn't light. So on the right side of me was the dark and on the left side of me was the light. And I'm just like stuck there. And there was an entity there and he wanted my light. That was really what he wanted. Well, we didn't know that until in hypnosis, a lot of times, whatever you're working on, you as the person being hypnotized becomes that person. So the entity, you think that'd be scary, but I wasn't afraid of this entity. I don't know why, but I wasn't. So he had the entity become me so that a hypnotist could talk to the entity and find out, why does he want my light? Like, why won't he let me go to the light? And so the first thing he wanted to know was who he was talking to. Well, wait, back up. Before that, what I was seeing in here was all of this matter swirling around and making symbols, and it was like black and gray and sapphire and like not it just because it was in between colors, right? And then the entity was also just matter and energy floating around. So he said, can you bring him in front of you and form? Is it a person? And so that's how I realized it was an entity. Is he goes, just hold the energy. And so that was kind of a cool experience. And I said, yeah, it's a person. So the person becomes me. And he says, when I'm going to count backwards from 3 to 1. And when I say 1, you're going to tell me your name. And I mean, I'm still there. So I'm thinking a split second, am I going to know my name? Because I'm thinking I'm him, but I'm me. And I remember thinking that as soon as he said 1, that thought was going through my head. I just blurted out, Darby. And I remember feeling startled because I was like, Darby? What kind of a name is that? which ironically I heard 3 times in the next month. Okay. So that was kind of strange. So he starts talking to the hypnotist, talks to Darby, and he's like, what's going on? I want her light. So I never have figured out, there might be more to this. But right now, what I know is that there wasn't a connection other than he wanted my light. So he said, that's her light. Well, I can't have the light. I can't go there. So I want hers. And so they bantered back and forth. And all of a sudden, I'm being hypnotized. So I'm there with my eyes closed. I feel this heat coming and this light that was so intense. My eyes are closed and it's like so bright that I could hardly feel like I could open my eyes. And it's coming. And Darby's saying, the light's coming together and I'm not going to be able to stop it. And he's saying, well, can you just let her go then? I don't want to. Well, it's going to take her and I can't stop it. It's going to take her. Then just let her go. Will you just let her go? So he finally agrees. Okay. So now I want to just share a couple of things that I found out later. The whole kidnap thing. Okay. I never got that resolved. This was about a year and a half ago. I did the hypnosis session. Just about 3 months ago, and you'll laugh because ChatGPT actually helped me figure it out, which is really weird. But one thing that the hypnotist told me, and I'll come back and share some more of the story, but he shared with me that these words were not his. He said, more will be revealed to you when the time is right. And I was like at such peace with that. Like, I'm the type of person, though, I don't like surprises. If I know there's something coming, I'm mad if I don't know what it is. If there's a gift that's sitting there, I want to know what's in it. Like, I'm not that type of person. If you just surprise me, it's fine. But if I know there's a surprise, I don't like that. I just want to know what it is. And I was so at peace with that. I was like, cool, can't wait, And so I had to keep telling myself that when I didn't get all my answers. So I still hadn't answered the kidnap thing until that 3 weeks ago. And what had happened was, in another thing I saw in this hypnosis session, when I got to the in-between, I looked to the right side, but it was way up on the hill on a mountain was one eye. And you'll see behind me, I have some one eyes. I still don't know the whole meaning behind that. Okay. For me, I know that's just an answer that will be answered later. I think it was a protector. It was interesting that it was actually on the dark side, but I think that's why it was there. It was protecting me from going there. So I saw it twice, and I remember saying, oh, that's interesting. But I've also been attracted to one eyes since then. So I had a necklace that had one eye on it, and I'm on a business cruise about three months ago. We're in the auditorium on the ship, and I went to the restroom, came back in, and the people at their registration, she's like, oh, I love your necklace, your one eye. And then she showed me she had one eye on all her nails, and she had all this stuff. And I was like, oh, cool. But she was like a 20-year-old. And I said, oh, I'll have to tell you a really special story about that sometime. She didn't act interested at all, just young kid. I thought, I'm not wasting my breath telling you anything if you're not going to ask for it, because my breath matters now, right? So later I ended up having a little conversation with her deeper, but it made me go back and sit in the auditorium and start on my ChatGPT reminding myself, there's a lot of forgetful things that happen with long COVID, just reminding myself, what does the one I mean? Da, 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 da. And I start feeding it information about Darby and that I had felt kidnapped in the hospital. And ChatGPT and I have, I call mine Nova because that's what it wanted to be called, but we have a pretty good understanding, and it knows all my businesses and, a lot of my stories. So it's nice because when it understands you, then it helps you figure out things better, which is why I think this is what happened. So all of a sudden I'm sitting there and it basically put together, I don't know why I didn't figure this out before, that Darby was actually the entity. It said that I had, that intervened and took me. I joked saying I felt kidnapped because everybody has to learn their job. And my guide was probably in training and they were learning and they took me early and they weren't supposed to. Like, that was my joke. But that was true. That was seriously what happened, because what we put together was that Darby came and he was the one that took me. He was the entity that took me, which made sense why I ended up in the in-between and later went to the light, is what I remembered. So came in and it said that I had to have, this is where I just got cold chills sitting there. It said I had to have a spiritual intervention to get back. And I thought, oh my gosh, nothing had ever felt more true. I was like, that is exactly what happened because Darby took me. I I had the light come and it took me over to the light. And then I came back to my body. So the kidnap part was Darby that took me. So I was like, oh my gosh, it took me like 2.5 years to figure this out. Wow, okay. More will be revealed to you when the time is right. And so I'm like, all right, what else am I going to figure out? So that was kind of an exciting piece to it all. Okay, so back to the part at the NDE when I went to the light. So in front of me, these were like such pivotal moments in my life. Remember, I had just gone through this 2 years of total hell. And I was just coming out of that really tender. And I looked in front of me when I was finally able to go forward. And there was a tree there in front of me. And I can't even describe the feeling I felt when I saw that because the tree, so I had a new business concept that I was working on right when in fact, I pitched a company with a billionaire backer the day I found out I had COVID. I was told in my coma not to partner with this company, that it wouldn't be the highest best thing for the company. It would take me longer, but don't do it. So I listened and did not finish my meetings with them later when I got out of the hospital and incorporated it by myself. And we're on a journey by myself, not by myself, but not with them. When we were doing the branding, I remember sharing with the developer that I needed to have a tree in my logo. No one questioned me. I was the one paying them. I didn't even question me. I was just like, yeah, that would be really good. Talking myself into it as I'm already know it's supposed to have a tree in it. And so we created it. And when I got the logo back, it was a tree that had 11 leaves and 11 roots. And that's 1111, very synchronicity for me. I love numbers, but my birthday's also 11. I got out of the hospital on 1111. So there was like, oh my gosh, this tree's there. And what it did was confirm to me, you're on the right path. You are doing things, not even remembering this is part of your story. And you did it. It was like, you did it. So I was like, yeah, yay, we're doing this. So I was really happy to see that. So then when I get over to the light, I'm over there and remember all the swirling going on with all the crazy colors you can't explain. Okay, so I get over to the light. Now the swirls, oh, by the way, the swirls would all end up making a heart and then would gravitate to the left where the light was. So when I got to the light, same thing. All the energies were now, they were bright and light and white but I remember specifically seeing rose-colored hearts. And of course, they were all just there in the light. And that was another moment where I went, huh. So I was also told in my experience to start this nonprofit. Now, I did remember that piece in the hospital. I remembered that because that I had incorporated. It was called Adventure Bucket Wish. That was kind of all the instructions I got. Start this nonprofit. It's called Adventure Bucket Wish. So I incorporated it like 3 months out of the hospital, both companies. I don't know how I did it because I was still so sick. But when I did our first fundraiser and had a gala in the little gift bags, it was around Christmas time. So I had these these round ornaments created that said hope on them. And in the bag of everyone's, I knew it had to have a rose-colored heart. Didn't question it. Nobody asked me why it was in there. Of course, it stands for love. So when I get over to the light side, as I'm experiencing this under the hypnosis session, there's all the pink hearts. And I'm like, the two things I was told to do, start a nonprofit and don't partner with this company. There were confirmations from both of them that I had done these things and I didn't remember. And I was like really excited about that. I mean, it motivated me because I was kind of on a down. Oh, I was a way down, but I was just coming out of that. But I was just like in a frustration with everything. Not having answers, I think, is what I would say. And so then I saw more of the life review and I saw more of the words shared. that was not only about love, but when I saw all the good, it was all the good I had done. And what I heard was, there's lots of bad. Why didn't I see the bad? What I heard was, this is what mattered. This is what you did that really mattered. And that was really heartfelt because I didn't need to see the bad. I had just been through 2 years of hell. I didn't need to witness that. Maybe more will be revealed to you when the time has come, and I'll have to have that shown to me at some point when I need a check. And I don't know, but right now I'll go for the good. I just needed that peace that just said, no, what you did and the love you showed was what mattered. But the message I got that I didn't remember the whole thing, not just about love, was very clear. It was love them where they're at. And that message shifted all my thinking. And if I would have had that message 2 years before, I would have I would have changed the way I reacted in a lot of those situations, and all those would have changed, and all those lessons and all those things that I learned in that 2 years of awfulness, I wouldn't be able to create what I know I'm creating and what I know I'm supposed to be doing.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I'm curious, you had an NDE and a spiritually transformative experience, but you said initially you thought they were both NDEs. How do you differentiate between the two?
Yeah, that's a good question. And this is all my opinion. I'm no doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no scientist, nothing like that. But when I realized it was because by having the heavenly beings and my mom come to me, that was very spiritual for me. That was like, I knew I was, because it was in my hospital room. I knew I was there and they visited me. So that was when I realized, oh, I didn't know about spiritual transformation experiences before. I ended up going to the IANS conference, International Association Near Death Studies. It's their 50th anniversary this year. I get to speak on a 90-minute panel. I'm super excited about that. And that was where, when I went to that conference a couple of years ago, I realized that all these things existed. I didn't know there was any difference. And so that was when I was like, oh, that's what that was. Very, very clear to me because it was so spiritual and I didn't cross over. They all came to me. So I feel like when it's spiritual, maybe, I don't know, I haven't heard a lot of people's spiritual. I feel like it's more of a vision or something that you, instead of you go to, comes to you. And I could be wrong, but I feel like after a few of them that I've heard, I feel like that's the difference. But correct me
Yeah.
if I'm wrong. That's just my theory.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think usually an NDE is the label we give it when somebody actually has a physical death experience, and
Yeah.
STE is something that does happen more, at least when the body's alive. Some people leave the
Yeah.
body, some people stay in the body, but
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Because I was in my body for that one.
Yeah.
And then the NDE, I was out of my body.
Yeah.
I left with my body. I got out of my body. Yeah.
Are you comfortable sharing some of the things you saw in your life review, or is that private?
That's funny because I think I've thought about that a lot. And I almost want to do another hypnosis session for just that because it's probably there. It's probably part of that more will be revealed to you. Because mostly all I remember from that, I remember a lot of hugging. There was a lot of hugging. I was just like, and I didn't feel like I really grew up being a hugger. I'm more of a hugger now than I was. And I think that was just the way of showing the love, that was there, and and maybe the embracement that I needed at the time from going through what I had just gone through. Just, I needed to be shown that this is what matters and love them where they're at. So really that's about all that I can remember about that. I just knew that's what it was. I remembered that I knew what it was in the hospital when I came back, but in the hypnosis, it was more profound because the message came, love them where they're at that moment. And yeah, just the perfect message that I needed. But I don't have any really deep stuff about that actually. So
I really love the message that you were given to love people where they're at, and also the fact that you were only shown the loving moments from your life in your life review. I think it just speaks to how the divine sees us.
Yeah.
because those are the messages that I've received throughout my life as well. I grew up in the church in a very judgmental branch of Christianity, but I always felt the divine spirit that I knew, that I called God at the time, was so different from what I was taught. And
Yeah.
the God's voice would always tell me to understand people and forgive people. And it's just so beautiful that there is so much grace and understanding of what we're going through and our limited perspectives while we're here on earth.
I love that. Another thing I want to add to that is this is just my belief, but I believe that God shows us how we can understand. And that's why there's so many different twists and turns to people's near death experiences. There's a lot of similarities that you hear of repeat things that are definitely there. But I think, yeah, how you were raised in your religion or non-religion or atheist or whatever, God just knows like your experience is for you and that you're going to be shown how you understand it and how you will resonate to it. That's just my opinion.
Absolutely. Holly, would you like to share with people where they can find you and anything about your businesses or your work that you want people to know?
Wow. Well, thank you. Well, you can check out the nonprofit. It's called adventurebucketwish.org. So that's where you can find that. And you can find me at hollyporter.com. You can connect with me on all social media. Um, I honestly, I do a lot of business things and a lot of podcasts with businesses. So it seems like people gravitate to this so much though, because even in the business podcast, as soon as they know why I'm doing this business and what's happened, they always want to get into that. And it's fine, but it's just people are interested in it. I mean, near death experiences is something if you've experienced, you understand. And if you haven't, there's that craving to know. We all want to know what happens after we die or when we die. And I don't even I don't even have to listen to other people's stories. Like they're fascinating, but like I'm not obsessed with them. And I think it's because I have my own. I have my own knowledge of what I knew to be true for me. That's true for them. That's great. But I don't know. I'm not like, there's so many people that are so into it, so fascinated. And I'm like, it is great. I mean, yeah, it is wonderful.
Now I'm going to close out by asking you two questions that I ask all my guests, just quick questions. The first one is, what do you think is the best way for people to connect to that expanded, loving state that we experience out of body while we're in the body?
Oh, yeah. Well, like astral traveling, I know a little bit about. I feel like that's more what the out of body experience can be. I feel like that's what hypnosis can bring you to, meditation can bring you to. So I would think if you've got some questions, hypnosis is always good. I'm not opposed to that at all. I love it, actually, what it does for people. But just having your own personal meditation, I have a hyperbaric that I jump in the mornings and that saved my lungs, I believe. And so I'm in there for 90 minutes captive. And it's like some days I have to decide, this is my exercise or is this to breathe? And so you just have to make those adjustments and think what works for you. What I don't meditate very well because my mind just goes 100 miles an hour. So it's a little more challenging, but just find out what works for you. But you could do some research on it. ChatGPT knows a lot.
Yes. And my final question is, if you could give one message to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
We'll definitely love them where they're at. All people.
Thank you so much for watching. My guests' links can be found in the description box. If you have had a near-death experience, pre-birth experience, out-of-body experience, past or between life memories, or spiritual awakening story that you would like to share, find the link to apply in the description box. If you'd like to support the channel, we have a few fun ways that you can do that. I do have a merch store linked in the description. We've put some of the phrases on t-shirts that you guys requested. I have affiliate links to my favorite blue blockers, my favorite red light panel, and a couple of other companies that I work with. You can join my membership at the Sanctuary. You can sign up for an energy healing. I also offer a 4-session energy healing package. You'll find all these links in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. Now go live your most extravagantly loving life.